First, HFY the Vexari Confederation flagship Eternal Vigilance dwarfed the human vessel Intrepid as both ships maintained orbit around the neutral meeting point of Proxima Centauri B. Captain Eliza Reyes stood on the bridge of her ship, shoulders squared, eyes fixed on the view screen that displayed the alien vessel, an elegant construction of gleaming purple-black alloy that seemed to absorb rather than reflect the light of the nearby star. "They're hailing us again, Captain," Communications Officer Rajiv Singh reported, his fingers dancing across his console. "The High Marshal is impatient." Reyes suppressed a smile. "Aren't they all? Open the channel." The screen flickered, revealing the stern visage of High Marshal Zev Kor, the military leader of the Vexari Confederation. With skin the color of burnished copper and 6 eyes arranged in a hexagonal pattern, the alien cut an imposing figure. The elaborate exoskeleton that covered the upper portion of their body glittered with embedded status markers, a mobile trophy case of their accomplishments. "Captain Reyes," the High Marshal began, their translator converting the clicking mandibles into smooth English, "we have maintained orbit for 17 standard cycles. The diplomatic summit was scheduled to begin 3 cycles ago. Your Federation's ambassador remains conspicuously absent. High Marshal, as I've explained, Ambassador Chen's shuttle encountered technical difficulties in the Orc cloud. They'll arrive within the next 12 hours. These things happen." All 6 of Zev Kor's eyes narrowed simultaneously. In the Vexari Confederation, such imprecision would result in significant consequences. "Well, High Marshal," Reyes replied, keeping her tone light, "in the Terran Federation, we've learned that flexibility often yields better results than rigid adherence to schedules. Perhaps this is one of the cultural differences our diplomatic mission can address." The alien's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sound the translator didn't bother converting. Reyes had been briefed enough to know it indicated irritation. "Very well," Zev Kor finally conceded. 12 hours. Not one temporal unit more. The screen went black. Lieutenant Commander Amara Okafor, the Intrepid's chief of security, whistled low. "Charming fellow." "They're just different," Reyes replied, though she shared the sentiment. "The Vexari value precision, order, and adherence to protocol. This delay is probably physically painful for them." "Ma'am," Science Officer Dr. Layla Amir interrupted, her dark eyes fixed on her console. "I'm detecting unusual readings from the planet's surface. Seismic activity has increased by 300% in the last hour." Reyes frowned. Proxima Centauri had been chosen as neutral territory precisely because it was uninhabited and geologically stable. Natural phenomenon. Amir shook her head. "The pattern is too regular. And there's something else, an energy signature I can't identify, emanating from the epicenter of the disturbances. Send the data to my station," ordered Chief Engineer Thomas Chen, his fingers already moving across his console before the words had left his mouth. After a moment of analysis, he looked up, his expression grim. "Captain, those energy readings, they're similar to ancient precursor technology we encountered in the Sirius system." A chill ran down Reyes' spine. The precursors, an extinct civilization that had once dominated the galaxy millions of years before any current species achieved spaceflight, had left behind technology so advanced it often appeared magical, and frequently deadly. "Notify the Vexari," she ordered. "Full data package." Singh nodded, but before he could open the channel, the ship's sensors blared in alarm. "Massive energy spike," Amir shouted. "Something's emerging from beneath the surface." On the view screen, the seemingly barren landscape of Proxima Centauri fractured. A massive structure, obsidian black and impossibly geometric, rose from beneath the planet's crust, sending shockwaves across the surface that were visible even from orbit. "What the hell is that?" Okafor breathed. Chen's voice was tight with tension. "If I had to guess, a precursor defense system. And we just activated it by parking two heavily armed ships in orbit. The massive structure continued to unfold like an origami creation in reverse, segments locking into place with terrible precision. At its center, a sphere of swirling energy began to form, growing larger by the second. "Captain," Singh called out, "the Vexari are hailing us." On screen, Zev Kor appeared, their normally composed features now animated with alarm. "Captain Rais, explain this immediately. Is this some kind of human trap?" "Hi, Marshal, we're as surprised as you are. Our readings indicate this is precursor technology." "Precursors?" The alien's voice rose in pitch. "Impossible. The precursors are a myth, a story told to younglings." "I assure you they were quite real," Rais replied. "And right now we need to focus on." A beam of blinding white energy shot from the structure directly toward the Vexari flagship. The massive alien vessel's shields flared bright purple under the assault but held. "They're targeting the largest threat first," Chen observed. "Captain." Amir's voice was urgent. "That weapon is drawing energy directly from the planet's core. Each blast is exponentially more powerful than the last. The Vexari shields won't withstand a second hit." Rais made a split-second decision. "Singh, open a channel to both our ship and the Vexari flagship. All crews need to hear this." "Channel open, Captain." "Attention all personnel of the Intrepid and the Eternal Vigilance. This is Captain Eliza Reyes. We are facing a precursor defense system that will destroy both our vessels if we remain in orbit. The Vexari ship cannot withstand another blast. We are initiating emergency protocol Omega. All hands prepare for immediate atmospheric entry. Intrepid will provide cover." She cut the channel and turned to her bridge crew. "You heard me. We're going in. Chen, divert all power to forward shields. Okafor, arm all forward batteries. We're going to give that thing something to think about while the Vexari get to safety." "Captain," Chen protested, "the Intrepid wasn't designed for atmospheric entry at combat speed. The structural integrity will hold," Rais finished firmly. "It has to." On the view screen, the precursor weapon was charging for another blast, the swirling sphere of energy now pulsing with ominous light. "Singh, get me the High Marshal." Zev Kor appeared on screen, mandibles clicking rapidly in what Rays now recognize as their species' version of panic. "High Marshal, there's no time to argue. Your ship can't take another hit from that weapon. We'll draw its fire while you descend to the far side of the planet. The structure can't target what it can't see." "You would sacrifice your vessel for ours?" Zev Kor asked, all six eyes blinking in astonishment. "That's the plan," Rais confirmed. "Though I'd prefer if we both survived this. Now move." To her relief, the Vexari flagship immediately began to descend, its massive engines flaring as it pushed toward the planet's atmosphere. "They're taking the bait," Okafor observed. "Now we just need to survive long enough for them to get clear." The precursor weapon tracked the movement of the Vexari ship, the sphere of energy swinging in its direction like a malevolent eye. "Not so fast," Rais muttered. "Okafor, fire everything we've got at that structure. Make it notice us." The Intrepid's weapons blazed, lancing out toward the precursor construct. The assault seemed to have no effect on the ancient technology, but it accomplished what Rais intended. The energy sphere swiveled toward them, its deadly focus shifting from the descending Vexari ship to the comparatively tiny human vessel. "It's working, Captain," Amir reported. "The Vexari are clear of its targeting range." "Good," Rais replied. "Now, Chen, give me everything the engines have got. We need to." The world turned white as the precursor weapon discharged, the beam impacting the Intrepid's shields with catastrophic force. The ship bucked violently, throwing crew members against bulkheads and consoles. Emergency klaxons wailed as systems overloaded across the vessel. "Shields at 12%. Chen shouted over the chaos. "Hull breaches on decks 3 through 5. Emergency force fields holding, but we can't take another hit like that." Reyes gripped her command chair, blood trickling from a cut on her forehead. Status of the Vexari ship. They've made it to the far side of the planet. Singh confirmed. They're safe for now. We won't be if we stay here, Okafor pointed out. That thing is charging for another shot. Ray stared at the view screen, watching as the precursor weapon began to glow with renewed energy. They couldn't outrun it, couldn't outgun it, and couldn't outmaneuver it. There was only one option left. Chen, plot a collision course. Her chief engineer's head snapped up. Captain, you heard me. That thing is drawing power from the planet's core through that central column. If we can disrupt the connection, even temporarily. Understanding dawned in Chen's eyes. It might buy us enough time to escape. His fingers flew across his console. Collision course plotted. But Captain, at this range, the impact cold. I know. Singh, send an encoded burst transmission to the Vexari. Let them know what we're doing and tell them to remain on the far side of the planet until we signal all clear. Aye, Captain. All hands, Reyes called over the ship-wide comm. Brace for impact in 30 seconds. This is going to get rough. The Intrepid surged forward, engines screaming as they pushed beyond recommended limits. The precursor weapon grew larger on the view screen, its alien geometry somehow more terrifying the closer they got. 20 seconds to impact. Chen counted down. 19, 18. Reyes gripped her chair tighter, a strange calm settling over her. This was what humans did. When faced with the impossible, they found a way. Even if that way was as simple and brutal as ramming a technologically superior enemy. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The Intrepid slammed into the central column of the precursor structure with enough force to shatter the forward sections of the ship. The view screen went dark, emergency lighting bathing the bridge in an eerie red glow. For a moment, there was silence, broken only by the distant groaning of tortured metal. Then, from outside, a blinding flash of light. The precursor weapon, its connection to the planet's core severed, was releasing its stored energy in an uncontrolled cascade. Get us out of here, Reyes ordered. Whatever's left of our engines, use it. The Intrepid, or what remained of it, limped away from the disintegrating precursor structure, moving just fast enough to escape the worst of the explosion that followed. The shockwave still hit them like a physical blow, sending the damaged ship tumbling through space. When the spinning finally stopped, Reyes pulled herself up from the floor where she'd been thrown. Status report, she called, her voice hoarse. We're alive, Chen replied, sounding as surprised as she felt. Barely. Life support is functional on the remaining decks. Engines are at minimal capacity. Comms are spotty. The Vexari. Singh, sporting a nasty gash across his cheek, checked his damaged console. Still on the far side of the planet. No sign they were caught in the blast. And the precursor weapon. Amir, who had somehow remained at her station during the chaos, studied her readings. Destroyed, mostly. The explosion collapsed most of the structure back into the planet. But Captain, I'm still detecting energy readings. Weaker, but present. I don't think we destroyed it completely. Reyes nodded grimly. Of course not. That would be too easy. She tapped her comm badge. Reyes to engineering. I need damage reports and repair estimates. The voice that replied was not from engineering, but from medical. Captain, this is Dr. Rivera. We have multiple casualties throughout the ship, including Chief Engineer Monroe. He didn't survive the collision. The bridge fell silent as the news sank in. Monroe had been with Reyes since her first command, a brilliant engineer and a good friend. Understood, Doctor, she finally replied. Do what you can for the wounded. Bridge out. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. Chen, you're acting chief engineer now. I need options. The physicist nodded, his expression somber but determined. We can restore minimal propulsion within a few hours. Weapons systems are largely offline. Shields, it'll take days to rebuild the emitter array. And the precursor threat. If Dr. Amir's readings are correct, the structure is damaged but not destroyed. It's likely repairing itself, drawing on the planet's core for energy. He hesitated. It's only a matter of time before it's operational again. Reyes sat back in her chair, surveying her battered bridge and exhausted crew. They had bought time, but at a terrible cost. And the battle was far from over. Singh, can we contact the Vexari? I can try, Captain. Communications are patchy, but I might be able to establish a direct narrow-beam transmission if they're listening for us. Do it. We're going to need their help if we want to finish what we started. As Singh worked to establish communications, Reyes stared at the static-filled view screen, her mind already racing ahead to what came next. The precursor weapon was wounded but not defeated. Her ship was crippled. Her crew was battered and diminished. But they were still alive, still fighting, still human. And that, Reyes had learned throughout her career, was often enough to accomplish the impossible. The impossible solution. The Vexari shuttle docked with the remains of the Intrepid with surgical precision, the magnetic clamps engaging with barely a sound despite the obvious damage to the human vessel's docking bay. Captain Reyes stood at the airlock, flanked by Lieutenant Commander Okafor and the newly promoted Chief Engineer Chen. None of them had slept in the 36 hours since their collision with the precursor weapon, and it showed in the dark circles beneath their eyes and the tension in their shoulders. Remember, Reyes said quietly, the Vexari value hierarchy and protocol. Address the High Marshal directly unless invited to speak to their subordinates. The airlock cycled open, revealing High Marshal Zev Kor and a small contingent of Vexari officers. The alien leader had to duck to enter the human ship, their exoskeleton scraping slightly against the top of the doorframe. Captain Reyes, Zev Kor greeted, all six eyes blinking in their species equivalent of a formal acknowledgement. Your vessel is functional. Barely, Reyes admitted. We've lost 23 crew members, including our chief engineer. Life support is stable but limited to the central decks. Engines are at 20% capacity. The High Marshal's copper-colored skin seemed to shimmer with an iridescent quality under the emergency lighting. Yet you survived. Impressive. The Vexari Confederation owes you a debt for your intervention. We did what anyone would do, Reyes replied. No, Zev Kor stated firmly. You did what humans would do. No other species in the known galaxy would have chosen to ram an ancient weapon of unknown power. It was, they seemed to search for the right word, unexpected. Speaking of the weapon, Chen interjected, earning a subtle headshake from Reyes for breaking protocol. Our scans indicate it's still active beneath the surface. Damaged, but repairing itself. Rather than take offense, Zev Kor turned their attention to the engineer. Yes, our readings confirm this assessment. The precursor device is reconstructing its primary power conduits. We estimate full functionality will return in approximately 72 standard hours, by which point it will likely target both our ships again, Okafor added. Indeed, the High Marshal gestured to one of their officers, who stepped forward with a data crystal. We have conducted an extensive analysis of the weapon's energy signature and structural composition. Our scientists believe it is designed to eliminate any orbital presence it deems threatening, which, evidently, includes all spacecraft not of precursor origin. Chen accepted the crystal, immediately slotting it into his datapad. His eyes widened as he scrolled through the information. This is comprehensive. The Vexari value thoroughness. Zev Kor replied, the translator somehow conveying the dry undertone. Our flagship's sensors are considerably more advanced than your vessel's. And what do your advanced sensors suggest we do about this problem? Reyes asked. The High Marshal's mandibles clicked slowly, a gesture Reyes recognized as hesitation. Our analysis indicates that the weapon's primary power core is located approximately 2 kilometers beneath the planet's surface. If we could deliver a precisely calibrated antimatter charge to this location, it would destabilize the core and render the weapon permanently inoperable. Sounds straightforward enough. Okafor observed. What's the catch? The catch, as you say, is threefold, Zevkor replied. First, the weapon is surrounded by defensive systems that will target any approaching vessel. Second, the power core is shielded by multiple layers of precursor technology that our weapons cannot penetrate. And third, even if we could reach the core, the resulting explosion would likely destroy a significant portion of the planet, along with any ships in proximity. Silence fell over the assembled officers as the impossibility of their situation sank in. The precursor weapon would be fully operational in 3 days. Their ships couldn't escape in their damaged state, and their only theoretical solution would kill them all anyway. So we're screwed, Okafor summed up eloquently. Chen, however, was still scrolling through the Vexeri data, his brow furrowed in concentration. Maybe not, he said slowly. These energy patterns, they remind me of something we encountered during an exploration mission to the Cygnus Rift last year. Zevkor's head tilted. Explain. The precursors didn't just build weapons. Chen continued, his words coming faster as his excitement grew. They built entire civilizations, transportation networks, communication systems. They were masters of energy manipulation on a quantum level. This is known, the High Marshal acknowledged, though little evidence of their transportation technology has survived. We found some, Chen replied. A network of quantum entanglement nodes that could transfer matter instantaneously across vast distances. We couldn't get it working. The technology was too degraded, but we did manage to map its basic principles. Reyes caught on immediately. And you think this weapon uses similar technology? Look at these readings, Chen said, turning his datapad so the others could see. The way it channels energy from the planet's core, the geometric structure of its components, it's using the same quantum principles. It's not just a weapon. It's a node in what was probably a planet-wide defense network. That is an interesting theory, Zevkor conceded. But how does it help our current situation? Chen's eyes gleamed with the light of scientific discovery. If it's built on the same principles as their transportation network, then it has a fundamental vulnerability. Quantum entanglement depends on perfect symmetry at the subatomic level. Disrupt that symmetry, and the entire system collapses. And how would we disrupt this symmetry? The High Marshal inquired. By introducing an asymmetric quantum field directly into the system. Chen looked around at the blank faces, then sighed. Basically, we need to feed it bad data, create a quantum signal that mimics its own, but is fundamentally flawed. Like introducing a virus into a computer system. You want to hack a 1,000,000-year-old alien superweapon, Okafor stated flatly. Precisely. Chen's enthusiasm was undone. And the beauty is, we wouldn't need to get anywhere near the core. We could transmit the quantum signal from orbit, using a modified deflector array. Zevkor's mandibles clicked rapidly, as sound ray is now recognized as their equivalent of thoughtful consideration. Our scientists have studied precursor technology for generations and never identified such a vulnerability. With all due respect, High Marshal, Chen replied, humans have a unique perspective on technology. We don't just study it, we play with it. We poke it to see what happens. Sometimes we break it just to understand how it works. A sound emerged from Zevkor that the translator didn't convert. A series of staccato clicks that made the other Vexeri officers shift uncomfortably. It took Reyes a moment to realize the High Marshal was laughing. Engineers, they finally said, the translator struggling to convey the tone. In every species, they are the same, driven by curiosity beyond the bounds of caution. Not always beyond caution, Reyes countered. Chen, what are our chances of this actually working? The engineer hesitated. Theoretically sound, practically untested. I'd say 30%. And if it fails? Best case, nothing happens, and we're back where we started. Worst case, we accelerate the weapon's repair cycle and it destroys us sooner. Reyes considered this. Are there any alternatives? None that I can see, Chen admitted. Our ships can't escape. We can't destroy the weapon conventionally. It's this or wait to be vaporized. Zevkor gestured to their officers, who withdrew to a respectful distance. The High Marshal then stepped closer to the human officers, lowering their voice. There is one alternative, Captain Reyes. The Eternal Vigilance carries a prototype quantum fission device, what you humans would call a planet killer. We could deploy it, destroy this world entirely, and escape in the resulting chaos. Reyes felt her blood run cold. You destroy an entire planet, one that might hold invaluable precursor technology and knowledge, to save the only diplomatic mission between our peoples, to prevent a weapon of incalculable power from falling into the wrong hands. Zevkor's 6 eyes blinked in sequence. Yes, without hesitation. A tense silence fell over the small group. Reyes could see Okafor's hand drift subtly closer to her sidearm, while Chen looked between the two leaders with open alarm. I understand your perspective, High Marshal, Reyes said carefully, but I cannot condone the destruction of an entire planet, especially one that poses no threat beyond the weapon we've encountered. We will pursue Engineer Chen's solution first. For a moment, she thought Zevkor might object, might even attempt to carry out their plan regardless. But then the alien leader's posture relaxed slightly. Very well, Captain. We will assist with this hacking attempt. But understand this, if it fails, I will not allow the weapon to be restored. The safety of the Confederation takes precedence over all other concerns. Let's make sure it doesn't come to that, Reyes replied, extending her hand. After a moment's hesitation, Zevkor reached out one of their 4 limbs, completing the human gesture of agreement. The next 48 hours aboard the damaged Intrepid were a blur of frenetic activity. Chen, working alongside a team of Vexari scientists, commandeered what remained of the ship's deflector array, reconfiguring it to generate the precise quantum field they needed. Meanwhile, Okafor and her security team quietly prepared contingency plans in case the Vexari decided their planet killer option was preferable after all. Reyes spent most of her time in what remained of engineering, assisting with repairs while keeping a close eye on the joint human Vexari science team. The collaboration was tense at first, the methodical, precise Vexari scientists visibly frustrated by Chen's more intuitive approach. But gradually, a grudging respect developed between them. They're not so bad once you get past the clicking and the extra eyes, Chen observed during a rare break, his hands black with conductive grease as he shared a cup of synthetic coffee with Reyes. Their quantum calculus is elegant, beautiful, even. High praise, Reyes noted with a small smile. How's the work progressing? Chen's expression turned serious. We've identified the quantum frequency the weapon operates on. The Vexari calculations were essential for that. Their mathematical models are incredible. Now we're constructing what amounts to a quantum logic bomb that should disrupt the weapon's core processes. Should. That's where we hit a snag. Chen set down his cup with a sigh. The deflector array is too damaged to generate a signal powerful enough to reach the core from orbit. We need to get closer, much closer. How much closer? Surface level. Directly above the weapon's main structure. And even then, we'd need to boost the signal strength considerably. Reyes nodded slowly, already seeing where this was heading. Let me guess. The only power source capable of generating that kind of boost is the Intrepid's warp core, Chen confirmed. Which means someone would need to take the deflector array down to the surface, connect it directly to the warp core, and trigger the signal manually. Reyes finished. A one-way trip. Chen didn't deny it. The radiation alone from an unshielded warp core would be fatal within minutes, and that's assuming the precursor weapon doesn't have surface defenses that target anything that gets too close. Have you told the Vexari? Not yet. I wanted to see if there was any other solution first. Chen ran a hand through his disheveled hair. There isn't, not with the time and resources we have. Reyes was silent for a long moment, weighing their options. I'll speak with the High Marshal. she finally said. This changes things. You think they'll go back to their planet killer option? It would be the logical choice from their perspective. Rice stood, setting aside her half-finished coffee. But I'm hoping we can offer them a third option. Which is? Let me worry about that, Rice replied, placing a hand briefly on her engineer's shoulder. Just get that quantum logic bomb ready to deploy. I'll handle the rest. She found Zevkor in the observation lounge, staring out at the damaged hull of the Intrepid where it faced the stars. The High Marshal acknowledged her entrance with a slight inclination of their head. Your ship bears its scars with dignity, Captain, they observed. Among the Vexari, battle damage is considered a mark of honor, evidence of survival against the odds. We have a similar concept, Rice replied, moving to stand beside the alien leader. Though we generally prefer to avoid collecting too many honors if we can help it. A soft clicking sound, amusement, Rice had learned. A practical approach. How may I assist you, Captain? We've hit a complication with the plan. Rice explained the issue as Chen had outlined it. The need for surface deployment, the power requirements, the likely fatal outcome for whoever conducted the mission. Zevkor listened without interruption, their 6 eyes fixed on the stars beyond the viewport. When Rice finished, they remained silent for several heartbeats. So we return to my solution, they finally said. The quantum fission device. That's one option, Rice acknowledged. But I'm proposing another. A joint mission to the surface, human and Vexari working together. We have the expertise to deploy the quantum disruptor. Your people have superior shielding technology that might offer some protection against the radiation. A suicide mission, regardless, Zevkor observed. The weapon will target any approach. Possibly. But we've been scanning it continuously since the collision. Its surface defenses appear to be mostly offline. It's prioritizing the repair of its main weapon systems. There's a window of opportunity, but it's closing fast. The High Marshal turned to face her fully, all 6 eyes blinking in rapid succession. You would risk more lives on a plan with minimal chance of success. I would give my people, and yours, the chance to volunteer for a mission that might save both our ships without destroying an entire planet. Rice met the alien's gaze steadily. It's what humans call having skin in the game, High Marshal. We don't ask others to take risks we wouldn't take ourselves. And if I refuse, if I insist on using the quantum fission device. Rice smiled thinly. Then we'd have a problem. Because while your weapon might destroy the planet, my security chief has spent the last 2 days figuring out how to disable your ship's launch systems. It wouldn't be permanent, but it would buy us enough time to try our solution first. For a moment, she thought she pushed too far. Zevkor's posture stiffened, their exoskeleton gleaming menacingly in the low light. Then, astonishingly, they made the clicking sound again, stronger this time, almost like a bark of laughter. You continue to surprise me, Captain Rice. First, you sacrifice your ship to save ours from a weapon neither of us anticipated. Then you propose a solution based on theoretical science even our experts consider speculative. And now you reveal you've been preparing to sabotage our vessel while simultaneously working with us. The translator couldn't quite capture the tone, but Rice thought she detected something like admiration. Humans are more complex than our diplomatic briefing suggested. We're full of surprises, Rice agreed. So what will it be, High Marshal? Do we work together on this, or do we start down a path neither of us wants? Zevkor was silent for another long moment before responding. I will allow a joint mission, under one condition. I will personally lead the Vexari contingent. It was Reyes's turn to be surprised. High Marshal, with respect, you're too valuable to risk on this mission. The diplomatic implications alone are precisely why I must go, Zevkor interrupted. If we are to forge a true alliance between our peoples, it must be built on shared risk and mutual respect. Besides, they added, mandibles clicking softly, I have not survived 8 military campaigns by sending others to do what I would not. Ray studied the alien leader, seeing them in a new light. Perhaps their two species weren't so different after all. In that case, she replied, extending her hand once more, we have a deal, and I'll be leading the human contingent. This time, Zevkor took her hand without hesitation. Then let us prepare, Captain. We have a weapon to disable and a galaxy to surprise. The human factor. The shuttle bay of the Intrepid buzzed with activity as the joint human-Vexeri mission made its final preparations. The modified deflector array, now barely recognizable as Federation technology after Chen and the Vexeri scientists had finished with it, occupied most of the small craft's cargo space, surrounded by the portable containment field that would, in theory, shield the team from the worst of the warp core radiation. At least for a while. Captain Rice stood before the assembled team, her gaze moving from face to face. Lieutenant Commander Okafor, who had argued vehemently to take Rice's place, but ultimately accepted her captain's decision. Chief Engineer Chen, whose theoretical breakthrough had given them this slim chance of survival. Dr. Layla Amir, who had volunteered her expertise in precursor technology despite having no combat experience. And 3 security officers, each hand-picked for their specialized skills. Across from them stood the Vexeri contingent, led by High Marshal Zevkor, 4 warriors in gleaming exoskeletons, each bearing insignia that Reyes had learned denoted special operations training. 2 scientists, their more elaborate exoskeletons marked with the symbols of the Vexeri Science Academy, and a single engineer, whom Zevkor had introduced as the most brilliant quantum specialist in the Confederation. The mission parameters are simple, Rise began, her voice carrying clearly through the shuttle bay. We deploy to the surface, position the deflector array directly above the precursor structure, connect it to the warp core, and initiate the quantum disruption sequence. The Vexeri shuttle will provide transportation and initial defensive capabilities. Once on the ground, we'll have approximately 30 minutes before the weapon's defense systems identify us as a threat, and approximately 45 minutes before radiation exposure becomes fatal, Chen added, his expression grim. Even with the containment field. Zevkor's mandibles clicked softly. My warriors will establish a perimeter to defend against any surface threats. The scientists will assist Engineer Chen with the final calibrations. The rest of you will maintain the containment field and prepare the warp core for the energy transfer. Remember, Rice continued, our goal is to disrupt the weapon's quantum matrix without destroying it completely. A controlled shutdown that leaves the precursor technology intact for later study. If possible, Zevkor amended, the priority remains neutralizing the threat to our vessels. Rice nodded in acknowledgement. Any questions? Okafor raised a hand. What's our extraction plan? A brief silence fell over the assembled team. It was Chen who finally spoke. Theoretically, if we time the energy transfer correctly, we'll have a narrow window to return to the shuttle before the containment field fails completely. Theoretically, Okafor repeated flatly. It would be dishonest to suggest this mission carries anything less than extreme risk, Zevkor stated. The Vexeri do not fear death in service to a greater purpose. We ask only that our sacrifice, should it come to that, be meaningful. Let's focus on making sure everyone comes home, Rice replied firmly. Synchronize your comms and translation protocols. We depart in 15 minutes. As the team dispersed for final preparations, Chen approached Rice privately. Captain, there's something I didn't mention in the briefing. The quantum disruption has a small, very small, chance of triggering a cascading reaction in the planet's core. Rice's eyes narrowed. Define small and cascading reaction. Less than 2% probability. And by cascading reaction, I mean potential planetary collapse. Chen's voice dropped even lower. The Vexeri scientists calculated it independently and came to the same conclusion. High Marshal Zevkor is aware. And you didn't think to inform me of this earlier. We only confirmed it an hour ago. And honestly, Captain, it doesn't change anything. We either try this, or we face certain destruction when the weapon reactivates, or the Vexari deploy their planet killer anyway. Ray sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose. 2% is within acceptable risk parameters, I suppose. But next time, engineer, don't wait until the 11th hour to share potentially mission-critical information. Understood, Captain. For what it's worth, I'm confident in the disruption sequence we've designed. It should work exactly as intended. It had better, Rise replied, because we're betting all our lives on your confidence. 15 minutes later, the sleek Vexari shuttle detached from the Intrepid's damaged docking bay, its engines glowing a soft purple as it banked toward the planet below. Inside, human and Vexari crew members sat in uneasy proximity, each making last-minute checks of their equipment. Atmospheric entry in 60 seconds, the Vexari pilot announced, the translator converting their clicks into the flat tones of a professional soldier. Deploying thermal shields. Rays watched through a viewport as the purple-tinged shield enveloped their craft, protecting them from the heat of entry. Beside her, Zevkor stood motionless, their exoskeleton gleaming under the shuttle's interior lights. Your species puzzles me, Captain, the High Marshal said suddenly, voice pitched for her alone. You behave recklessly by most standards, yet achieve results that more cautious approaches would never attempt. We call it thinking outside the box, Rise replied. Humans have a knack for finding the third option when presented with an impossible choice. This box thinking, it explains much about your history, your rapid technological advancement, your unexpected solutions. Zevkor's 6 eyes blinked in sequence. The Vexari advanced through careful iteration and proven methods. We would never have attempted your collision maneuver. Different approaches, both valid, Rise offered diplomatically. That's why we're stronger working together than separately. The shuttle shuddered as it pierced the atmosphere, the inertial dampeners struggling to compensate for the turbulence. Through the viewport, Rise could see the curvature of the planet giving way to a blurred landscape rushing up to meet them. Surface approach initiated, the pilot reported. No defensive response detected from the target. Yet, Okafor muttered from her position near the weapon systems. The shuttle descended rapidly, breaking through cloud cover to reveal a stark landscape below. The precursor structure was immediately visible, a massive geometric form of obsidian black rising from a shattered plane, its damaged sections still emitting occasional pulses of energy as its self-repair systems worked. Set down 500 meters from the main structure, Zevkor ordered. Maintain stealth protocols until we're on the ground. The craft slowed its descent, maneuvering carefully to a position where a ridge of upthrust rock would provide some cover from the precursor weapon sensors. It touched down with barely a bump. Vexari precision at its finest. Atmosphere is breathable but thin, Dr. Amir reported, consulting her tricorder. Temperature is -15 Celsius. No immediate biological hazards detected. Environmental suits for everyone, Rise ordered. Not just for the cold, but for additional radiation protection. The team donned their gear quickly. Humans in Federation environmental suits, Vexari in their specialized armor that somehow managed to accommodate their unusual physiology. The containment unit for the warp core was loaded onto a hover sled, along with the modified deflector array. As the shuttle's ramp descended, revealing the alien landscape, Rise felt a momentary sense of awe despite the danger. They were about to set foot on a world that likely hadn't felt the tread of sentient beings since the precursors themselves walked here millions of years ago. Vexari warriors, establish the perimeter, Zevkor commanded. Scientists begin scanning for the optimal placement point for the deflector array. The Vexari moved with practiced efficiency, their exoskeletons allowing them to navigate the rocky terrain with surprising grace. The humans followed. Chen and Dr. Amir already deep in discussion with their Vexari counterparts about energy signatures and quantum resonance patterns. Rise walked alongside Zevkor, both leaders keeping a watchful eye on their teams and the looming precursor structure. No response yet, she observed. Maybe it doesn't recognize us as a threat on the ground, or it is concentrating its resources on rebuilding its primary systems, Zevkor replied. Either way, we should proceed as though discovery is imminent. They reached a position approximately 300 meters from the structure, close enough for the deflector array to establish a direct quantum link, but hopefully far enough to provide some reaction time if the weapon activated its defenses. This is the spot, Chen announced, consulting his modified tricorder. The quantum resonance is strongest here. We need to set up the array facing directly at that central spire. The team moved with controlled urgency, unloading the deflector array from the hover sled and beginning the delicate process of aligning it precisely with the precursor structure. Meanwhile, Reyes and Okafor supervised the preparation of the warp core, which sat ominously in its temporary containment field. Containment field is holding at 87% efficiency, Okafor reported. Once we remove the safeties, that'll drop to about 60%. We'll start feeling the effects of radiation exposure almost immediately. Understood, Reyes replied. Make sure everyone has their radiation meds. The Vexari scientists were working alongside Chen now, making minute adjustments to the deflector array's positioning. Their movements were precise and economical, every action calculated for maximum efficiency. The quantum harmonics are aligned, the lead Vexari scientist reported. We are ready to establish the energy connection to your warp core. Chen nodded, turning to Reyes. We're good to go on this end, Captain. Once we connect the power coupling, we'll need to initiate the disruption sequence within 5 minutes, or the array will destabilize. Do it, Reyes ordered. As Chen and the Vexari engineer moved to connect the warp core to the deflector array, a low rumble shook the ground beneath their feet. All eyes turned to the precursor structure, which was now pulsing with a red-tinged energy that hadn't been present before. It's detected us, Dr. Amir said unnecessarily, her voice tight with tension. How long until it can target our position? Reyes demanded. Amir consulted her tricorder. Energy levels are rising rapidly. I'd estimate we have 10 minutes, maybe less, before it can generate a weapons-grade discharge. Move faster, Zevkor commanded their team. Warriors, prepare defensive positions. Scientists, assist the humans with whatever they require. The tempo of activity increased dramatically as everyone felt the pressing countdown. Chen and the Vexari engineer worked feverishly to complete the power connections, while Okafor directed her security team to set up makeshift barriers using the shuttle's emergency force field generators. Connection established, Chen finally announced. Powering up the deflector array now. The modified array hummed to life, its emitter dish glowing with an eerie blue light as it drew power from the warp core. The containment field around the core fluctuated visibly, its edges wavering like a mirage in desert heat. Containment field efficiency dropping, Okafor warned, currently at 58% and falling. Radiation levels rising, Dr. Amir added, checking her instruments. We're all receiving approximately 20 millirems per minute and increasing. Initiate the disruption sequence, Reyes ordered, watching as the precursor structure's pulsing energy grew more intense. Chen nodded grimly, entering a complex series of commands into his control pad. The deflector array's hum deepened, changing pitch as it began to generate the carefully calculated quantum field designed to disrupt the precursor weapon's operating system. Quantum field initializing, he reported. Power drain on the warp core is higher than anticipated. Containment field efficiency is dropping faster than we calculated. How long until the disruption takes effect? Zevkor demanded. Difficult to say, Chen replied, his eyes never leaving his instruments. The weapon's systems are more resilient than we expected. The quantum field is establishing a connection, but the weapon is actively resisting. Another tremor shook the ground, stronger this time. A section of the precursor structure that had been damaged in the Intrepid's collision began to unfold, revealing what was unmistakably a defensive weapon. We have incoming, Okafor shouted. Surface defense system activating. A beam of searing white energy lanced out from the structure, striking a point approximately 50 meters to their right. The ground erupted in a shower of superheated rock and soil, sending debris raining down around them. "It's ranging its shots," Rise realized. "The next one will be closer." "Warriors, defensive formation Delta," Zev Kor commanded. 4 Vexeri soldiers moved with astonishing speed, positioning themselves around the deflector array with weapons drawn. To Reyes's surprise, each warrior activated a personal shield generator, creating a linked defensive barrier around the critical equipment. "The disruption sequence is at 30%, Chen reported, his voice strained. "Containment field efficiency down to 41%. Another energy beam struck, this one much closer. The ground shook violently, nearly knocking several team members off their feet. One of the Vexari warriors was caught by a piece of flying debris, their exoskeleton cracking audibly as they fell. "Med team," Rais called, but Zev Kor held up a hand. "Focus on the mission," the High Marshal stated firmly. "My warrior will survive." "Captain," Okafor called urgently, "the containment field is failing faster than expected. At this rate, we'll reach lethal radiation levels in less than 15 minutes. Rise looked from the warp core to the deflector array to the precursor structure, which was now charging for another shot. The quantum disruption was working too slowly. They wouldn't survive long enough to complete the sequence. "We need more power," she said finally. "We need to accelerate the disruption. If we push the warp core any harder, the containment field will collapse completely," Chen warned. "We'd have minutes at most before radiation poisoning became fatal." "I am willing to accept this risk," Zev Kor declared. "As are my warriors." Rais nodded grimly. "So am I, Engineer Chen. Remove the safety protocols and divert all power to the quantum disruption sequence." Chen hesitated for just a moment, then nodded. "Aye, Captain." His fingers flew across the control pad, overriding safety systems and redirecting power flows. The deflector array's hum rose to a near-painful pitch, the blue glow intensifying until it was almost blinding. "Containment field at 23% and falling rapidly," Okafor reported, her voice tight. "Radiation levels are approaching danger thresholds." Another energy beam struck, this one close enough that they could feel the heat of it through their environmental suits. 2 of the Vexeri defensive shields flickered and died, their generators overloaded by the proximity of the blast. "Disruption sequence at 62%, Chen called out. "The weapons systems are beginning to destabilize." On the precursor structure, the unfolding defensive weapon suddenly stopped, its movements becoming jerky and uncoordinated. The pulsing red energy flickered, briefly replaced by a chaotic rainbow of colors, before returning to its ominous glow. "It's fighting back," Dr. Amir observed, her eyes wide behind her helmet visor. "The weapons control systems are attempting to recalibrate against our disruption." "Containment field critical," Okafor warned. 17% efficiency. Radiation exposure is now at harmful levels. Reyes could feel it, a subtle warmth spreading through her body, accompanied by a growing nausea. The early signs of radiation sickness. Around her, both humans and Vexari were showing similar signs of distress, movements becoming less coordinated, breathing more labored. "We need more power," Chen insisted, his voice hoarse. "The disruption is working, but too slowly. The weapon is adapting." Zev Kor stepped forward, their exoskeletons' movements now visibly strained. "My ship carries emergency power cells designed for quantum applications." They turned to their engineer. "Bring them." The Vexeri engineer hesitated. "High Marshal, those cells are inherently unstable when removed from their containment units. The risk of catastrophic detonation is acceptable," Zev Kor finished firmly. "Go." As the engineer rushed back toward the shuttle, another defensive beam lanced out from the precursor structure, this one striking perilously close to their position. One of the Vexari warriors was caught in the edge of the blast, their exoskeletons shattering as they were thrown through the air. They did not rise, shields failing, reported one of the remaining warriors, their translator unable to completely mask the strain in their voice. The Vexeri engineer returned moments later, carrying what looked like two crystalline spheres, each pulsing with a violet light. The power cells, High Marshal. Zevkor took the cells and brought them directly to Chen. These can be integrated with your warp core to boost the quantum field generation, but they are highly unstable. Once activated, they cannot be deactivated safely. Chen examined the alien technology with professional interest despite the dire circumstances. This could work. The quantum resonance is compatible with our systems. He looked up at Reyes. Captain, with these cells, we could complete the disruption sequence in minutes rather than hours. But the radiation surge would be, he hesitated, considerable. Fatal, you mean? Reyes stated flatly. Almost certainly, Chen confirmed. For anyone within 100 meters. Reyes looked at her team, all of them already showing signs of radiation exposure, all of them aware of what integrating the Vexeri power cells would mean. Can the disruption be triggered remotely? From the shuttle, perhaps. Chen shook his head. The quantum harmonics require constant adjustment. Someone needs to stay with the array to maintain the field integrity until the disruption completes. I will stay, Zevkor declared immediately. It is my duty as High Marshal. No, Reyes countered. Your people need you for the diplomatic mission. This alliance is too important to risk its primary architect. She turned to Chen. How many people are needed to complete the sequence? Just one, Chen replied. The Vexeri power cells will provide more than enough energy. It's just a matter of maintaining the quantum field alignment until the disruption takes hold. Then I'll stay, Reyes decided. The rest of you, return to the shuttle. Get to a safe distance. Predictably, protests erupted from both human and Vexeri teams. Okafor was the most vocal, stepping directly in front of her captain. With all due respect, Mom, that's not happening. You're too valuable to the mission. This isn't a democracy, Commander, Reyes began, but Chen interrupted. Actually, Captain, it needs to be me. All eyes turned to the engineer. The quantum alignments require specific expertise. No one else has the necessary understanding of both the deflector technology and the precursor quantum systems. He is correct, the Vexeri scientist confirmed reluctantly. Even our specialists could not maintain the precise calibrations needed. Chen continued, his expression resolute despite the fear visible in his eyes. This was my idea, my theory. I should be the one to see it through. Another energy beam struck nearby, sending everyone ducking for cover as debris rained down around them. The precursor structure was now pulsing erratically, sections of it unfolding and retracting seemingly at random as the quantum disruption began to affect its control systems. Containment field at 12%, Okafor reported grimly. We're all receiving dangerous levels of radiation now. Reyes looked at Chen, saw the determination in his face, the acceptance of what needed to be done. She recognized it as the same expression she'd been prepared to wear herself. You're sure about this? She asked quietly. Chen nodded. I've never been more certain of anything, Captain. He managed a small smile. Besides, they'll name a new engineering principle after me. The Chen quantum disruption effect has a nice ring to it, don't you think? Despite everything, Reyes found herself smiling back. It does. She placed a hand on his shoulder. It's been an honor, Engineer Chen. Likewise, Captain. Chen turned to the Vexeri engineer. Let's integrate these power cells before our friend over there figures out how to shoot straight again. The remaining team members worked quickly to prepare the Vexeri power cells for integration with the warp core. Meanwhile, Okafor organized the evacuation, herding both human and Vexeri personnel back toward the shuttle. We should maintain minimum safe distance, but remain in communication range, Zevkor decided, their mandibles clicking rapidly in what Reyes now recognized as agitation. Engineer Chen may require guidance during the final stages of the disruption. Agreed, Reyes replied. Dr. Amir, You'll coordinate with Chen from the shuttle, monitor the quantum fields, and provide any assistance you can." The scientist nodded, her face pale with radiation sickness, but her eyes clear. "I'll keep the comms open." As the integration of the power cells neared completion, the evacuation began in earnest. The wounded Vexuri warrior was carried by their comrades, while the humans gathered what essential equipment they could salvage. Rise was the last to leave, pausing beside Chen as he made final adjustments to the system.